The year was 1982. Two musical empires were about to collide in the most unexpected way. Diana Ross, the undisputed queen of Motown, had conquered America with her voice and presence. Julio Iglesias, the Spanish charmer, was desperately trying to break into the American market that had remained stubbornly closed to foreign artists. What happened between them would remain one of music history's most closely guarded secrets, until now. Los Angeles, March 1982. The Beverly Hills Hotel buzzed with the energy of the music industry's elite, gathering for the annual ASCAP Awards. Diana Ross, freshly divorced from her tumultuous marriage to Robert Ellis Silberstein, was there as the evening's honored guest. Julio Iglesias attended as an ambitious outsider, still fighting for American acceptance. According to witness accounts from that evening, their first encounter was electric. Diana, accustomed to being the center of attention, found herself captivated by this Spanish gentleman who didn't seem intimidated by her star power. Julio, for his part, saw not just America's sweetheart, but a woman of incredible sophistication and musical intelligence. "I watched them from across the room," recalls music producer Quincy Jones, who was present that evening. There was an immediate chemistry. Diana was laughing, really laughing, for the first time in months, and Julio, he was completely mesmerized. The conversation that night lasted 3 hours. They spoke about music, about the challenges of maintaining authenticity in an industry that demanded conformity, about the loneliness that comes with global fame. By evening's end, they had exchanged private telephone numbers. What the public didn't know was that Diana Ross was still emotionally entangled with Berry Gordy, the Motown mogul who had discovered her, and remained a powerful influence in her life. Their relationship was complex, part professional mentor, part father figure, part former lover. Berry had never fully released his claim on Diana, and he certainly didn't appreciate foreign competitors. When Berry learned about Diana's interest in Julio Iglesias, his response was swift and calculated. He began spreading word through industry channels that Julio was not suitable for American audiences, that his accent was too thick, his style too European. More importantly, he made it clear that anyone who worked with Julio might find themselves excluded from Motown projects. Berry was territorial, explains former Motown executive Suzanne DePass. He saw Julio as a threat not just to his relationship with Diana, but to the carefully constructed image of what American music should be. A Spanish crooner, romancing Diana Ross, didn't fit his vision. But Diana had made her own fortune and her own decisions. She was no longer the young supreme who needed Berry's protection. If anything, his interference only strengthened her resolve. Through the spring and summer of 1982, Diana and Julio began a series of clandestine meetings that would have made Hollywood screenwriters jealous. They met in private recording studios after hours, in exclusive restaurants with secluded booths, at Diana's Malibu beach house when her children were visiting their father. The relationship that developed was unlike either had experienced before. Diana, accustomed to men who were either intimidated by her success or trying to use her fame, found in Julio someone who was already internationally successful and genuinely interested in her thoughts and experiences. Julio discovered a woman whose musical sophistication matched his own, someone who understood the pressures of global stardom. They would spend hours just talking about music, remembers pianist David Foster, who occasionally joined their informal jam sessions. Diana would sit at the piano, Julio would have his guitar, and they would create these beautiful, spontaneous arrangements. The chemistry was obvious, but it was more than romantic. It was artistic. Their musical collaboration was as passionate as their personal connection. They began working on songs together, blending Diana's Motown soul with Julio's Latin romanticism in ways that neither the American nor Spanish music industries had ever imagined. By autumn 1982, their relationship had evolved into a full musical partnership. Using David Foster's private studio in the Hollywood Hills, they recorded what music historians now believe were some of the most innovative cross-cultural songs of the 1980s. Diana sang in Spanish for the first time in her career. Julio experimented with R&B rhythms that transformed his traditional ballad style. All of You, the song they recorded together, was revolutionary. Diana's powerful vocals complemented Julio's tender delivery in a way that bridged not just languages, but entire musical traditions. The recording sessions, held in complete secrecy, produced 4 completed tracks that record industry insiders would later describe as commercially impossible but artistically groundbreaking. But the sessions were about more than music. Studio engineer Bruce Swadian, who worked on these recordings, later revealed that the emotional intensity between Diana and Julio was palpable. "I've recorded a lot of duets," he said, "but this was different. They weren't just singing to each other, they were singing for each other." The problem was that neither artist could officially release these recordings. Diana was still contractually bound to RCA Records, which had no interest in promoting Spanish-language material. Julio's label was equally resistant to R&B experimentation. The songs that could have changed music history remained locked in a vault. In December 1982, photographer Ron Galella captured them leaving Spago restaurant together. The images, published in People magazine, sent shockwaves through both the American and international entertainment press. "Diana Ross's Mystery Man," read the headline, accompanied by photos that showed unmistakable intimacy. The media attention was immediate and intense. American tabloids speculated about Diana's Latin lover. Spanish newspapers defended their national treasure against Hollywood gold diggers. Both artists' representatives issued carefully worded denials, but the damage, or depending on your perspective, the revelation, was complete. The paparazzi siege that followed was relentless. Photographers camped outside Diana's homes, followed Julio to recording studios, and turned every public appearance into a media circus. For 2 people accustomed to controlling their public images, the loss of privacy was devastating. The press attention killed the magic, Diana would later confide to close friends. "We went from being 2 artists exploring beautiful music together to being a tabloid sensation. The genuine connection we had couldn't survive that kind of scrutiny." As 1983 began, the pressure from both artists' business teams became overwhelming. Diana's manager argued that association with a foreign artist could damage her crossover appeal to white audiences. Julio's American representatives worried that romantic entanglement with an African-American performer might hurt his chances in conservative markets. The recording industry in 1983 was still deeply segregated, not by law, but by unspoken commercial rules. Interracial relationships between major stars were rare and commercially risky. Cross-cultural musical collaborations were even rarer. Diana and Julio were challenging multiple boundaries simultaneously. Berry Gordy's influence campaign was having its effect. Radio programmers were quietly told that Julio's music wouldn't work for their audiences. Venue owners were warned that booking Julio might affect their relationships with Motown acts. The pressure was subtle but systematic. It was economic warfare disguised as market research, explains music industry analyst Nelson George. The message was clear. Julio Iglesias could be successful in America, but not with Diana Ross. That relationship threatened too many established power structures. By spring 1983, the strain was showing. What had begun as a beautiful artistic and personal connection was being strangled by commercial considerations and media pressure. Diana began pulling back from their private meetings. Julio, recognizing the impossible position she was in, made the painful decision to step away. Their final recording session took place in April 1983. According to those present, both artists were professional, but distant. The natural chemistry that had made their earlier collaborations magical was gone, replaced by the careful politeness of 2 people who knew they were saying goodbye. All of You would eventually be released, but only after significant modifications that removed much of its Spanish-language content and toned down the obvious romantic chemistry between the performers. The song became a moderate hit, but those who had heard the original recordings knew it was a shadow of what might have been. The breakup was handled through representatives. No dramatic confrontations, no public statements, just a gradual cessation of contact between 2 people who had genuinely cared for each other but couldn't overcome the commercial and cultural barriers that separated their worlds. The consequences of their brief but intense relationship continued to ripple through both artists' careers for years. Diana threw herself into her film career, appearing in movies that kept her busy and far from the music studios where she and Julio had created magic. Julio focused on his international touring, eventually achieving the American success he had sought, but always as a solo artist. Neither ever spoke publicly about their relationship. When asked by journalists, Diana would simply say they were good friends who made beautiful music together. Julio was equally circumspect, referring to Diana as one of the most talented artists I've ever had the privilege to work with. But those closest to both artists noticed lasting changes. Diana's subsequent romantic relationships seemed to lack the artistic passion she had shared with Julio. Julio, despite his continued success with female audiences worldwide, became more guarded about mixing his personal and professional lives. In the late 1990s, rumors began circulating about the existence of additional recordings from the Ross Iglesias sessions. Music collectors claimed that complete Spanish-language versions of Diana Ross songs existed, as well as English-language versions of Julio classics that had never been released. David Foster, now one of the most successful producers in the music industry, has confirmed that such recordings exist but remain in private hands. There are probably 6 or 7 complete songs that no one outside of a small circle has ever heard, he revealed in a 2019 interview. They represent a musical fusion that was 20 years ahead of its time. Efforts to secure release of these recordings have been unsuccessful. Both artists maintain control over the material, and neither has shown interest in revisiting this chapter of their careers. The songs remain locked away, musical artifacts of a relationship that might have changed the trajectory of both American and international popular music. Music historians now recognize the Ross Iglesias collaboration as a crucial missed opportunity in the evolution of popular music. Their brief partnership represented a path toward the kind of global multicultural music that wouldn't become mainstream until the late 1990s. They were doing world music before world music existed as a category, explains Dr. Maria Rodriguez, professor of ethnomusicology at UCLA. Diana brought the soul and sophistication of Motown. Julio brought the romantic sensibility and melodic complexity of Latin music. Together, they created something entirely new. The commercial success of later Latin pop crossovers, like Ricky Martin and Shakira, proved that American audiences were ready for the kind of music Diana and Julio had created decades earlier. But by then, the moment had passed. Both artists had moved on to other projects, other relationships, other phases of their careers. Today, Diana Ross continues to tour and record, a living legend whose influence on popular music cannot be overstated. Julio Iglesias remains one of the best-selling recording artists in history, beloved by millions around the world. When their paths cross at industry events, they greet each other with the warmth of old friends. But the spark that once threatened to reshape popular music has long since cooled. The story of Diana Ross and Julio Iglesias represents more than just a celebrity romance. It's a window into the complex forces that shape popular culture. The intersection of art and commerce, the power of racial and cultural prejudices, and the price that artists pay when they challenge established boundaries. Their brief collaboration produced beautiful music and demonstrated the possibility of genuine artistic connection across cultural divides. But it also revealed the limitations of an industry that, despite its rhetoric of universal appeal, remained deeply divided by race, language, and commercial calculation. The songs they recorded together remain some of the most innovative cross-cultural music of the 1980s. The relationship they shared, however briefly, proved that music truly is a universal language. Whether the world was ready for their message is another question entirely. In the end, Diana Ross and Julio Iglesias gave us a glimpse of what popular music could become if it transcended the artificial barriers that separate cultures and markets. That their collaboration was brief makes it no less significant. Some connections burn bright and briefly, leaving an indelible mark on everyone they touch. Their secret romance may have ended, but its influence continues to resonate through every artist who dares to cross cultural boundaries in pursuit of something beautiful and new.